There's a scene in American Psycho where Patrick Bateman murders a man and then critiques his own business card. Not before the murder, not after, during. He kills someone, and what occupies his mind is whether his cardstock is a better shade of off-white than his colleagues. Most people watch that scene and think it's satire, a joke about Wall Street vanity. But here's what nobody tells you. That scene isn't exaggerated. That scene is clinically accurate. Patrick Bateman is not a fictional monster. He is a real psychological profile. And the terrifying part? You've probably met someone exactly like him.
Bret Easton Ellis published American Psycho in 1991. It was so disturbing that his publisher dropped it before it even printed. People called it gratuitous, offensive, pornographic in its violence. But buried underneath the blood and the business cards is something Ellis was doing deliberately, something most readers miss entirely. He wasn't writing a horror story. He was writing a diagnosis. And the diagnosis has a name: psychopathy. Not the Hollywood version, not the chainsaw in the woods version. The real one, the quiet one, the one that wears a suit and shakes your hand.
Here's the first thing you need to understand about psychopathy. It is not an absence of personality. It is an absence of self. Patrick Bateman has no inner life, no genuine preferences, no real desires. Everything about him, the morning routine, the business cards, the obsessive knowledge of Genesis albums, is performed. It's a costume, a very detailed, very convincing costume. Psychologists call this masking. The clinical term is shallow affect, the inability to feel emotions authentically, paired with an uncanny ability to mimic them perfectly. Bateman doesn't love expensive restaurants. He goes to them because people like him are supposed to love expensive restaurants. He doesn't care about his appearance. He maintains it because appearance is the only currency in his world. And this is where Ellis does something genuinely brilliant. He lets us inside Bateman's head. And what we find there is almost nothing. No warmth, no longing, no guilt. Just observation, just performance. Just the hollow sound of a man narrating himself into existence. Because without the narration, there is nothing there at all. This is the part most people misread. When Bateman kills, people assume it comes from somewhere dark and explosive, some deep well of repressed anger, a traumatic past, a breaking point. But if you read the novel carefully, if you sit inside his narration long enough, something deeply unsettling emerges. He isn't angry when he kills. He is entertained. And when the entertainment fades, he is bored again. This is the clinical signature of psychopathy that researchers like Robert Hare have documented for decades. What drives violence in a psychopath isn't passion. It's stimulation-seeking. The psychopathic brain, and studies using fMRI imaging have confirmed this, shows reduced activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear, empathy, and emotional response. To compensate, the psychopathic mind constantly seeks intensity, novelty, sensation, anything to feel something. For Bateman, murder is just the logical escalation of that search. First it was status, then possessions, then power, then control.
The violence isn't the point. The feeling of the violence is. And even that fades quickly. There's a moment in the book where Bateman finishes a kill and immediately returns to discussing a restaurant reservation. Ellis isn't being provocative there. He is being precise. That emotional flatness, that pivot back to the mundane, is exactly what forensic psychologists describe when they interview people who've committed acts of extreme violence without apparent motive. They don't linger in the moment. They move on. Here is where the story stops being about one man and starts being about all of us. Ellis set American Psycho on Wall Street in the 1980s deliberately. Because what defines that world? Surfaces, status, the performance of success, a culture where seeming is more important than being. And Bateman? Hollow, mimicking, violence lurking just beneath the expensive suit, fits in perfectly. Nobody notices him. Nobody suspects him. His colleagues are too busy competing over business cards to look at the man holding them. Ellis is making an argument, a deeply uncomfortable one, that a culture obsessed with image and status is not just compatible with psychopathy, it is optimal for it. The psychopath doesn't stand out in that world. He thrives in it. And this is where the psychology becomes genuinely haunting, because research supports this. Studies on corporate leadership have found that psychopathic traits, charm, fearlessness, lack of empathy, strategic manipulation, are disproportionately common in high-ranking executives. Not because psychopaths are smarter, because the environment selects for them. A world that rewards the performance of confidence over genuine connection, that values outcomes over ethics, that mistakes emotional detachment for strength. That world produces Patrick Batemans. Or more accurately, it attracts them, it promotes them, and it protects them.
So, here's the question Ellis leaves us with. And it's a question he never answers directly. Did any of it actually happen? The murders, the confessions, the bodies. There are scenes in the novel, and more clearly in the film, that suggest it may all be fantasy. A delusion. A daydream Bateman retreats into. Because the alternative? The emptiness of his real life is too unbearable to sit with. And somehow, that interpretation is more disturbing. Because it means Patrick Bateman's violence may never have been real. But his emptiness always was. A man so hollowed out by the performance of living,
so alienated from anything genuine that the only inner life he could construct was one built on blood. That is the dark psychology behind Patrick Bateman. Not a monster hiding in plain sight. A mirror. Held up to a world that made him possible, and then looked away.
If this kind of deep psychological dive into literature is what you're here for, the next video goes even darker. We're talking about a man who may be the most psychologically accurate villain Shakespeare ever wrote. No rage, no motive, just pure, surgical destruction. You'll want to stay close. And if this video made you think, or made you uncomfortable, that's exactly what it was supposed to do. If you want more of this, more psychology, more dark literature, more of the things nobody explains properly, subscribing takes 2 seconds, and it means the next video finds you. If this one hit differently, share it with someone who reads, someone who thinks, someone who can handle the discomfort. And if there's a character, a book, a story that you think deserves this kind of breakdown, leave it in the comments. I read every single one.